Again, thank you very much for joining us today. We know that your time is valuable, and we hope to bring some value with these presentations. With me today, I have Nathan Newberg, who is our technical sales, Ben Kress. Most of you should know him. Your account uh, uh, customer success manager, sorry. And Laura Ward, who I believe most of you have met as well. So let's go ahead and get started. The goal today is to go over all the capabilities of payroll and answer any questions that anybody may have. And again, for those of you that were not um, logged in when I mentioned this flow that we have here, it's actually pretty good. And if you guys want to take a screenshot, or I can take a screenshot and send it to you later, let me know. But it's really the process of processing payroll. So you create the batch, you process the payroll, create the payments, whether it's checks or ACH, and then you process, you release, you create the liabilities, and then you do your reporting. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and get started. And I'm going to start with the payroll preferences because this is where everything starts. So if I go to payroll preferences, I'm allowed to tell the system how I want payroll to behave. This stuff is pretty standard. And, what are we going to use for regular hours, for holidays, for commissions, and so on. But this is very important. This is the area where we tell the system where to pull the general ledger information from the payroll product. So in this case, we're saying that all earning accounts come from the earning type. So earning types would be regular, overtime, double time, whatever. So that's what this is saying. Other options that we have available is to put the GL account at the employee level, at the pay group, at the labor item level, at the project, or at the task. So in this case, we're going to pull it from the earning type. And then the other side is the sub account. So where do we pull the sub accounts for? Most people have like department and product type, or your sub account can be just anything. And a little tidbit here, when you're highlighting a field like this, if you press F3, it will give you the options that are available. So again, the sub account could come from the employee, from the pay group, from the project, from the labor item, from the earning type, or project task, or the branch. So in this case, these are all coming from the earning type. The setup that we have here is the data sample that we get from Acumatica. I would say this type of behavior is not very typical. So let's just leave it there. Deductions and benefits. The deduction liability account usually gets set up at the pay group or at the deduction code level. And again, the sub account, in most cases, the sub account would come from the employee or the labor code. But hopefully you get the picture. For those of you that have project accounting, then we could potentially burden your projects with the wage cost and the information coming from payroll. One caveat of this is that then you have to wait until you process payroll to see the status of your project. Most people don't like that. So there's other ways to handle this. Do you want to update your GL immediately when you post? I would recommend that. You can post on summary or in detail. This was actually not working for a while, but it's working in 2022. We're going to post on release and so on. So I'm now going to go and talk a little bit about the different earning type codes. One piece of information that is very important about Acumatica's payroll is that you do not have to update your taxes yourself. There is no year-end process like in other products. We used to represent a product that truthfully at the end of a year was so busy and so stressful for us because we had to upgrade every single customer before they processed the payroll for the new year, and it was a whole process. That does not happen with Acumatica. So Acumatica, the taxes come from a tax engine by the name of Symmetry, and Symmetry updates all the taxes for the entire United States, which means that if you hire somebody in New York tomorrow, or in Pennsylvania, or in Ohio, or in Washington State, the taxes are ready for you to go. And I'll go over that a little bit more in detail. The only taxes that you are responsible for updating on an annual basis are workers' compensation for those of you that have workers' compensation taxes, and your state unemployment. And the reason for that is because state unemployment and workers' compensation are based on your company. So each company may have a different rate. So what are the earning types? The earning types can be bonus, commission, double time. I mean, you can read all the different ways in which we can pay people. There's a ton of them here. But if you have some other way that you pay somebody, we can always create a new one. So I'm just going to pull the regular just because that's probably the most popular one that you're going to use all the time. We use regular for both salary and hourly employees. That is designated at the employee level, whether the rate is an hourly rate or an annual rate. In the description, you can put whatever you want. Earning type category could be wage or overtime. We do handle piecework, amount based, or time off. What is amount based? Like commissions, bonuses, and so on. You need to specify for each one of your codes whether it contributes to the workers' compensation calculation and whether or not it accrues time off. If you want to inactivate a specific code, you can uncheck this button and that automatically inactivates the code. The reporting type, this is for W-2 purposes and is subject to taxes. You can specify, let the tax engine calculate it, or is subject to all taxes, non-taxes, all but the least below, or none but the least below. So there's a lot of flexibility on how to set that up. Project settings, if there's a default project code, most people don't do that. And then GL accounts, since we told the system that the GL account would come from the earning type, we have to specify the GL account here and the sub account. And as you can see, because we turned them on in the payroll preferences, now they're required fields over here. If you guys have any questions while I'm discussing this, please don't hesitate to type them in the Q&A. And I'm pretty sure that Nathan and Ben will keep an eye on that and make sure that we can answer those questions. So moving on, I'm going to talk about deductions and benefits. And what are deductions and benefits? Deductions and benefits are those things that either we're taking money out of our employees' our employees' paychecks, or we're paying on behalf of our employees, even though it may not affect their paychecks. Things like health insurance, 401k. Well, there's a bunch of them. So let's start with a 401k. 401k in this case is both a deduction and a contribution. Most companies, if the employee contributes to the 401k, then the company will match a certain percentage. So what's cool about the Acumatica payroll is that we're able to set up both in the same screen so we don't have to duplicate our efforts when we are setting up these codes. In this case, this is set up at the employee settings. We can specify, we should specify, not can, but should specify who is the vendor, because with Acumatica is going to create all the AP liabilities that come from payroll. So always create the vendor. And how do you want the description of that line item to come up when we create those liabilities? My favorite, it's always the payment date and the code. So if I was processing payroll today, and today is what? The 9th of November, it would say November 9, 2022, and the code would be 401k. So that's my favorite, but again, everybody has different taste. On this side, again, active or inactive. If it is a garnishment, like child support or something more ordered by the government, you need to check this, because this will then activate some more information at the employee level, and we'll go through that. Does it affect the tax calculation? Yes, because the 401k is non-taxable for the federal tax. So we're going to use the tax engine to calculate, and the tax engine has a lot of different options here that we can turn on depending on what the deduction or the benefit is. In this case, it's a 401k, but as you can see, there's lots of other different options. What else? Is ACA applicable? That would be only for health benefits. Is it a payable benefit? So I don't know that I've ever used that one. That must be new. Calculation method. It could be a percent, or it could be an amount per hour, or a fixed amount. And like with anything else, 401k, every employee can choose a different percent. So I would put here the one that you think is the most popular, or just simply put a 1 and then change it at the employee level. That would be true for a 401k. For example, health insurance, I strongly recommend that you take the time to set up all the different programs that you have. So for example, employee only, employee and spouse, employee and children, employee and family, because then when the rates go up or down, well, typically up when it's health insurance, then all you have to do is change the amount here, and it will change it for every single employee. So this is the deduction side. So now this is the contribution side. So for the contribution, this is what the employer is paying on behalf of the employee. And typically, the benefit or the contribution does not affect the paycheck amount. It's just money that's going to be deposited on the employee's behalf, in this case, into their 401k account. This one, typically, the employer, the person setting up the payroll, will know exactly what that percentage is. And then we also have the GL accounts. As you can see, none of them are required, because when we set up our payroll preferences, we didn't specify that any of this information would come from the deductions and benefit codes. Overtime rules. Did I change something? Probably. Overtime rules can be specified in the system to calculate automatically for you. So every state has different overtime rules. So, or not every state, but there's a lot of different overtime rules. So we can do daily based on an 8-hour day. We can do weekly based on a 40-hour week. And we can specify which state that applies to. So if California works one way and Washington State works a different way, we can certainly specify that. The other thing we can do is specify that when it's a Sunday, they get double time, or when it's a holiday, they get double time, or something to that effect. The payroll classes allows us to segregate our employees into different groups so that we can manipulate that data a little bit easier. So in this case, there's a question there. Let's see. Overtime rules, if nothing is entered in there, a default OT rule that Acumatica uses for calculation. So if you don't predefine the overtime rule, the system will not calculate overtime. So if you want to start calculating overtime, we can certainly do that. And we can help you set it up. Okay, payroll classes. This is a way of segregating your employees. Probably the most important criteria is whether they're salary exempt, non-exempt, or hourly. Based on that, you will have at least 3 different classes if you have all 3 different kinds of employees. Then the next thing is, the pay group. Pay group is typically the frequency of pay. However, I've had a customer that had so many employees that they had a person assigned for a group of employees. They were all biweekly, but what we did is we created pay groups by the name of the person that was processing the payroll so that he or she would know exactly what her employees were. How many, I'm not going to read the details. You guys can do that on your own. The other criteria for this is, well, there's a couple of things. The workers' compensation code, if you specify it here, it will default. But if you have multiple workers' compensation codes, like in the state of Washington, for example, depending on the job you're doing, you get a different one. I would leave it blank so that then you can enter it at the when you set up the employees. If you have unions, work location, again, if you have lots of different work locations, I would not enter here the default, because that will default and it may end up being you using the wrong location for an employee. Paid time off, we can associate different levels of vacation with the different employee classes. Vacation and sick, I guess, or PTO of any kind. Unions, most of our customers, since we don't do construction, they don't have unions, but if you do, you can specify the union and the different rates. And again, this is more towards the construction type of customers. Pay groups. We talked a little bit about this. We can have different frequency of payroll. So bi-weekly, semi-monthly, monthly, you name it, whatever you need. And then in this case, because our payroll preferences said that we were going to specify GL accounts at the pay group level, then in this case, we're specifying where the benefit expense are, the sub-accounts, the liabilities, the deductions. Like I said, this setup doesn't make a lot of sense to me because most people would want to have their benefit expenses to different GL accounts, the deduction liability to different GL accounts, and so on. But if this works for your organization, then that is available there. Workers' compensation codes. I understand not every state has workers' comp codes, But if you're in the state of Washington, for example, you certainly do. In the state of Washington is based on a per hour, and you get a rate for yourself and one for the employee. The workers' comp code needs to be set up as a deduction first, so we can take a look at that if somebody's interested in. And then here you would specify the different rates for the different jobs. So right here. The payroll calendar, again, if you're monthly, then when does the period start? When does the period end? And what is the pay date? So in this case, the year starts on it's monthly, and then from the 1st to the 31st. To me, this is kind of backwards. I would say that if you're paying monthly, you would pay February 1st for these people, but this is the way that the sample data was set up. Again, work locations, different locations. Let's take a look at the tax maintenance. So when we enter a new employee, let's say we just got a new employee in the state of Louisiana, then you would enter that employee at the way you would do it is you would type employee, and see this organization. I'm going to make that into one of my favorites so that then I can come here hello, and I would start here. So when I enter a new employee, you have to enter the address of that employee here in this screen that's about to come up. Okay, here we go. So we enter our new employee, we enter all the pertinent information, we enter their address, and if the address is in a state that you have not done payroll before, then when I'm going to leave that there, and I'm just going to go here and go to my tax maintenance. Once you enter the information here, all the information about that employee here, you would enter the position. This is important as well. The start date. For if you want to keep historical information about your employees, you can, if they're getting promotions and things like that, you can always add more levels. So let's see if we have somebody here. There we go. Let's see. Here we go. So this person got a promotion in August and was promoted to the same position. But as you can see, you can have the history of when something ended and began, and you can have a long list of different details. Acumatica does not have an HR system per se, but we have the ability, of creating attributes. And in those attributes, you can add a lot of the information that your typical HR system has. For example, emergency contact information, things like that. The payroll system has also a lot of the information that you would need, that you would have in an HR system. So a lot of the elements are there. If you guys need applicant tracking, we definitely do not have that available, and we don't have any way to track it either. So, but in general, once you enter the information for the employee here, then you're going to go and say, this would say create payroll employee. Now it says edit. So I'm just going to go ahead and say edit. And when I Did it not go there? This will bring me to the payroll employee, but at that point, I can go here and say update taxes. And if the employee is located in a different state, then it would bring up the taxes for that different state. The taxes that the tax engine knows that are required for that state based on the address of the employee. In states like Ohio, Pennsylvania, that have taxes that are based on the block or the neighborhood or the school district and all that, those will come up. So at this level, once you have updated taxes, you have to enter the expense accounts and the sub accounts if you told the system that you would code those based on the different tax codes. Another part that needs to be entered is the tax details. And here you would enter the description of the AP line item when you create the liabilities. We would also have to enter that vendor over here. So this is important screen to make sure that we enter all the required information. For SUDA, I think I mentioned that SUDA is one of the only tax codes that you need to enter your rate. This is what you will enter your rate. The wage limit is typically taken care by the tax engine. So only the rate is necessary. And this will go straight to all the employees that have Washington State as their location. Is there any questions about setup before I move to processing payroll? Okay, doesn't seem like it. So once we have set up all of these, well, actually, the next thing would be to create the employees. And again, we start at the organization level. And then once we've created them there, we have to create the payroll employee. I don't know why my system is so slow today. I understand my video is very choppy as well. Oh, I lost video, I guess. So this is the payroll employee. And here, this information, which is the address, would come from the screen, the prior screen where we enter the address. Then we go to employee history. And this will also come from the prior screen. You would have to make sure that this information is correct. This is coming from the class. You would enter the class. And these are the defaults for that class. If we want to change something, then you need to uncheck that button. And then you can change the information within that field. As you can see, now I have a looking glass. And when I check that, the looking glass will go away. Under employment history, again, these are all the different positions that this employee has had. Under tax settings, so this is where it gets interesting. Here is where I said that we have a lot of the HR information that you would want to have in a system. And the idea is that by having it here, then we can create reports that give you the information in the way that you want. Obviously, filing status is applicable to payroll, but ethnicity, that's an HR. What was the state of hire? Let's see what else. This is based on, this is for the 401k. This is HR information. So a lot of information. You would also note that these are all federal or general questions. And I would recommend that if you have payroll, you go check them out and see what kind of things you want to make sure you track. In this case, this particular employee is in the state of Washington. So now it changed from federal to Washington. And now it's asking me information that the state of Washington is requiring in order to process payroll for Washington. If it was in Virginia, I think we have a Virginia employee here. This is painfully slow, and I apologize for that. No, this one's still Washington. Anyways, how did we get the Washington in there? You have to go to this taxes tab and import taxes. So again, in my prior example, if we just hire somebody in Louisiana, when you import taxes, then you will see Louisiana down here along with the federal. Federal is automatic, assigned to everybody. But by importing taxes, you will get the state tax that's applicable to your employee into that employee. And you will see that the SUTA rates came directly from from the other screen. In this case, it seems that this has been modified at the employee level, which you can do. You're probably wondering what are these warnings? They're always there at the beginning, making sure that you take a look at all these fields and that the information that is there is correct. Let's go to the compensation. Again, we talked about RG being the regular hours code that is used for both salary and hourly. So I enter the rate. In this case, obviously, this is annual, but if it was hourly, I can change it to hourly. Probably don't want to do that. And then the start date. As you can see, this is a required field, so it would have to be entered um, in order to process payroll. Then we go to the deductions and benefits. And let's see, health insurance again. This is automatically coming from the setup. So if I want to change it, then I would have to uncheck this box, the deduction defaults, and that will allow me to make changes to this number. The same thing with the contribution is $1.50, but if I want to change it, then I can uncheck here and make changes. Remember I said that garnishments, if you had a garnishment, that it was important to set it up. That will turn on these garnishment details where you can enter the legal document number, the amount that you're supposed to collect, all kinds of information specific to that employee. Paid time off. In this case, we have sick and vacation. They can be calculated based on a percentage per hour or a total number of days per year. So most people have a minimum of 2 weeks per year for salaried employees, and then they go up to 3 weeks and so on. We can enter that here, and by adding, where am I? Oh, the effective dates, I can enter my different step ups of PTO. Payment, this is where we would enter ACH information. In this case, there's a savings account that gets 10% of the paycheck and a checking account that gets the reminder. One of these lines has to have this checkbox, and the one that has the checkbox is the last one that the system will look at. So it usually should be the last line on your distribution. You can split payment into as many accounts as you want, but you cannot split payment between a paper check and ACH. It has to be one or the other. And again, if we specify that something is coming from the employee, like for example, the sub account, then this would show a required field here, and I would have to enter the sub account. The way that this system is set up doesn't require me to do any of that. Once I'm done setting up my employees, then I'm ready to process payroll. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to go to payroll batches. And I'm going to tell the system whether this batch is a regular batch or a special batch. When do I do a special batch? When I'm paying bonuses. When I'm paying an employee because the employee left and I have to process a special check. When I have a new employee and the new employee didn't start at the beginning of the pay period, I need to do a special batch. So different circumstances. We have a question. How is the sequence field used? Sometimes it's required and sometimes it's not. Yeah, let's see. Where am I going? Employee payroll settings. So we have a question. How is the sequence field used? That is referring to deductions and benefits. And you can specify the sequence of the deductions and benefits so that the system will take deductions and benefits in the order in which you specify. This is specifically applicable to when you have employees that may run out of money before, they may run out of money for all the different deductions that they may have. I realize that, and Phil, you're right, we have noticed that some of this has not behaved the way that you would expect. But in general, the sequence should be able to, you should be able to specify which one of the deductions gets taken out first and second and third and fourth. That is the way that it's supposed to behave. Payroll batches. I didn't make any changes. So again, we were talking about regular and special. In most cases, you're going to do a regular run. The pay group, I'm going to run the monthly. And then the pay period. This is a little complaint. It shows the earliest pay period. Instead, it should be showing in descending order so that you don't have to go through years and years and years. So what I do is I always change it here to make it descending so that I can start from the latest date to the earliest. In this case, we're going to do November. And I'm going to go ahead and say add employees. So if you're using Acumatica's time entry system and your employees are entering time in Acumatica, you want to use time activities. If most of your employees or you're just doing salaried employees, you can pre-populate employees with the default, and that will, if an employee makes $3,000 a month, it's going to populate $3,000 a month, and that will do it. And sales commissions, if you're using the sales commissions from Acumatica, you can bring them over by clicking this. In this case, I'm just going to pre-populate with employee defaults. And again, you can specify by class, or where you can specify by, I'm just going to do hourly, I'm going to do salaried, and so on. One thing to note is that Acumatica is very finicky about the data that comes in. So once I go ahead and click add and close, the data that's in the setup Oh, is it because I clicked it twice, maybe? Or I didn't enter the pay group? What did I do wrong? Oh, saying that we already paid these employees. Sorry about that. Let's take a look here. Oh, it's on hold. That may be my fault. So I had already created this. It was the employee had already been added to a batch, and as you can see, the information is there. It will give you a total of earnings here and a total of hours. If you want to look at specific employees, you can see what's in that particular batch. You can also see the deductions and benefits that are included. So for those of you that have payroll that is biweekly, for example, you're going to have 2 payrolls a year in which you probably are not going to want to include health insurance and um, some of the other benefits because you take those twice a month so that you can match the bills that you're getting from your insurance providers, for example. So you can check and uncheck what benefits you want to process during this particular pay run. And then which overtime rules do we want to make sure that are applied to this particular pay run. And you can do that as well. So once we've done that and we have the totals here, we're going to take it off hold and we're going to go ahead and release it. The processing payroll in Acumatica is very easy, as long as you have the setup correct. And again, Acumatica is very finicky about people making changes to the setup once the batch has been created. In most cases, it will not change what brought into the batch, and you would have to delete that employee from that batch and create a different batch for that employee or recreate the entire batch again, depending on the situation. Once you've created the batch and released it, then we're going to go to process payroll documents. And here is where if you had a bunch of different batches, you can process them all at the same time. If the batch is on hold, and in this case, that's not the case, then we're going to go straight to calculate. And here's our 3 employees. We're going to go ahead and say process all, and it's going to calculate. So what it's doing is based on the setup, whether the employee is married, filing single, how many deductions, additional withholding, and all that information is being passed to Symmetry, who is then sending back the tax amount for each one of those paychecks for the different taxes that apply to each one of the employees. This usually takes a little bit. So, and since my system is being slow, it may take more than a little bit, but look at that. That was quick. So once they've been calculated and everything processed correctly, they disappear from here. If there's an error, you will see that red button saying what the error is, and it gives you opportunity to open up and look at the error. So from here, I can go to recalculate, which will show me the paychecks. I can actually look at any particular paycheck. Let's take a look at this one. And here it gives me the summary. So this is the total amount of hours and dollars for the detail, sorry. So for each day, how many hours, how many dollars, and all the information required. If I go to summary, then it shows me that it was 176 hours. That was the rate, and that's the total amount. And that's my month to date amount, quarter to date, and year to date. My deductions, the taxes, and this is something that I really like. Oh, in the taxes area, if I have any questions or, how did it come up with $302? I can see that the taxable wages were 20,833. My gross pay was 21,083. So obviously there were some deductions that were not applicable to my Medicare. So I can easily figure out how it all gets calculated. If I need to make changes to an amount, I can click this, and it will allow me to override. Let's see. Paid time off, that should be automatic. It shows you the accrual calculation. Workers' compensation, again, if you're in Washington, you would have that. In some states, it's an insurance, so it's not applicable. Union and financial. So once I am happy with the paycheck, in this case, I made a change to one of the deductions. So it's telling me that I need to recalculate this particular paycheck. I can do that directly from here. I can just calculate, and it will recalculate all of the taxes once again to make sure that everything is accurate. Once it's done, I can either save it here or save the current and exit. Let me get out of there. So I am in the recalculate. The other place where I can make changes to the paychecks that I'm processing is in this paychecks and adjustment screen. This payments and adjustment screen is also going to list all the different payrolls. And as you can see, this is all records, but I can see if I have any paychecks that have not been calculated, paychecks that have not been paid, and paychecks that have not been released. So in this case, these are the 3 paychecks that I'm working on. And from here, I can do exactly the same thing that I did from the other screen. I can open the paycheck and make changes or take a look, whatever I need to do. Once I'm happy with everything that I'm seeing, then I can create the payments. So in this case, I'm going to use my ACH and my account, and it lists my 3 employees. And then from here, I can just go ahead and process all. So I am, in essence, creating those payments in the system. Because these employees have split their paychecks into multiple accounts, as you can see, each one of them has 2 different accounts and different amounts. So now from here, I can confirm the payment. I can export the payment, which is my ACH, and then I can release it. So let's go ahead and export. If you have a prior version of Acumatica, the earlier version, There was very specific steps that needed to be done in a certain order, and exporting was the last thing. I think they got a lot of comments about that, so they now put it all in one screen. So here's our HCH file. This should look familiar to those of you that process payroll and have seen this kind of file before. This seems to be way bigger. Oh my goodness. Okay, so now I'm going to confirm payment. The payment has been confirmed. And then the last thing that I can do is release. Once I have released all my payroll, the next step is to create the liabilities so that then I can pay all my taxes and my health insurance and all that stuff. And we'll go ahead and do that in a minute here. Here we go. So now you can see that the status has changed. If I go to my paychecks and adjustments, you will also see that the status of my last 3 checks is released. And this tells me that the create liabilities hasn't been processed. I would enter the day of the payroll here. As you can see, there's a ton of stuff here. It's probably never been processed. Yeah. So let's just do it for the last payroll. What we can do is between 11/01/2022 and 11/30/2022. And then I'm going to go ahead and process all. We have 4 minutes left. For those of our clients, we have created a series of inquiry screens that we will automatically give you when you have the Acumatica Payroll. Acumatica works with a product by the name of Atrix, and Atrix can either provide you with the information for the tax payments, or can actually process the taxes for you. I know some of our customers are processing taxes through Atrix, and some of you are just getting the information from Atrix. If I go to payables, let's make sure that the payroll release, depending on the setup of your payables. Yep, that was released. So then let's look at the IRS. Oh, I know what it is. It put them on hold. So this is based on the setup that you have on your payables, the behavior of where you're going to find these payables that we just created. And as you can see here, these are all on hold. So, but I just wanted to show you one of these transactions so you can see what they look like. So in this case, this is Virginia Department. The transaction description is the state income tax, Virginia state income tax. That's why I like the date in here, so that you know where that was. And there's the amount. And that's it. And you can tell that it came from payroll. Tax payable. Okay. We're pretty much 1 minute away from the hour. Where are my report? Oh, I mean payables. That's why I'm not seeing payroll stuff. Government reporting, Atrix. We talked a little bit about Atrix. Again, all the different reporting, not all of it, but most of it. With the inquiry screens that we've created, you will have all the information you need to process your reporting. Once you feel comfortable with Atrix and the number that Atrix is providing you, you can let Atrix, for a fee, process your payments and process your quarterlies and your annual reporting if that's what you would like to do. Otherwise, there are reports here that will give you the information you need in order to do the reporting yourself. So I know that was a lot of information. Hopefully there was something you learned. For those of you that already have the payroll, if you didn't have the payroll, then hopefully this will give you a very good overview of what the Acumatica payroll has to offer. Again, if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to ask me or any of our team members. And with that, I think I'm done. Any more questions from anybody? Okay. Thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it. And we'll talk to you soon. Thanks.